Welcome to the Rusted Garden. Today I want to talk to you about when you fertilize your seed starts, how I do it. I like to use the chemical fertilizers for specific reasons. But really, how much do you give the plants? When do you start feeding them? I have another channel called My First Vegetable Garden, which you might start seeing videos that look similar. That's because I have two different channels. And the My First Vegetable Garden channel, I spend more time going into depth of just explanations and explaining what I'm doing as if you're gardening for the first time. So if you want more information, certainly check that channel out. So when do you fertilize your seed starts? Well, the best question to really start with is, what do you use to fertilize them? I like to use a soluble fertilizer. NP and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, something that has micronutrients. That's often I've used Miracle Grow. A lot of people don't like that company. It's a chemical fertilizer. This is a chemical fertilizer, chemical, organic. Plants don't care what you use, only we do. The chemical fertilizers I've found cover the needs of the seed starts. They don't bring in sort of raw food for insects to eat, and they actually smell less, and it's a lot less expensive, and it works perfectly well for these plants. So I recommend a soluble NP and K. You don't want something that you just mix in the soil. Sometimes I do that. I add in things. This year I'm not doing that. But when you're feeding these, when they're really growing, you want a soluble fertilizer, one that I like to mix with water, so when you bottom water your plants, they get the fertilizer. So like I said, Miracle Grow are similar. I like the chemical fertilizer. It has the NPK, the micronutrients. Plants don't care if it's an organic fertilizer, if it's a chemical fertilizer. The only difference is the chemical fertilizer is processed by you and I, by a person. Usually it's some sort of energy, heat, electricity that changes the form of the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium into a form the plant can use right away, immediately. That's what you want for your seed starts. But plants don't care. Sometimes people say, hey, I like the organic fertilizers because they're more natural, they don't harm soil life. That's true. However, there's really little or no soil life in here. So if you're using an insoluble organic fertilizer, there's nothing in here that's going to break down that organic fertilizer and change it into a form for your plant to use. So again, there's no soil life here. There's nothing to break down the insoluble organic fertilizers. Nothing's going to be harmed too. A lot of people say, well, if you use chemical fertilizers, you're killing soil life. You would be if you overuse it and you use it like on the scale of mass farming. But if you use it in your garden and you use it wisely, you're not going to harm your soil life. I don't want to use organic fertilizers for seed starts because I'm indoors for reasons I already stated. You know, I've tried using like fish emulsion and different things, and it smells bad. And I also found I got more insects, or at least it attracted insects to my seed starts, and they don't have micronutrients. Yes, if I go and buy different extracts and kelp extract and I mix in that with, you know, fish emulsion, and then I add something else in there, yeah, I can do it. But I don't believe that's better for me. I don't believe that it's better for the plants. I know I'll get a couple thumbs down for that. Organic gardening is a method. It's not a product. Just think about it. If you want organic, I recommend that you make sure you go with a soluble fertilizer, something that covers NP and K equally and has micronutrients, and don't overspend. I think organic gardening is great. I do that more in my earthbed gardens. I prefer that. Seed starts, I prefer chemical. Container gardening, I use a combination of both. But don't overspend. We're starting to get ripped off when we buy products. I just saw 5 pounds of kelp fertilizer for $16. That's ridiculous. You don't need that. Yeah, find a good organic fertilizer, but don't overspend for it. Now the key, whatever you decide to use less fertilizer. I'm not using Miracle Grow because I found these other products on sale this year. But let's just use Miracle Grow for instance. Miracle Grow is 24% nitrogen, 8% phosphorus, 16% potassium. You don't need all that fertilizer. In fact, you'll hear me talking about using it at half strength outside. Inside, definitely half strength, if not even quarter strength. I'll talk more about that in a second. You have small plants, you have no rain, and you have a lot of evaporation. So if you use these fertilizers that are 24, 8, 16, 15, 30, 15, it's too much. There's no rain coming and washing out the excess fertilizer, so it's building up. There's a lot of evaporation, so as the water evaporates, the chemicals sort of crystallize and you get more in your soil than you originally started with. So think about it. The chemicals get absorbed into the fertilizer gets absorbed into the soil. The water evaporates out. You're left with the N, P, and K. Then you add more into there, so you're building up a concentration. That is a downfall, of chemical fertilizers if you overuse them. That is true. So less in your seed starts. The concentration of fertilizer will damage your plants. Overusing fertilizer will damage your plants. So let's go with Miracle-Gro 24-8-16. Well, 12-4-8, that's half strength. I think that's a bit high. Go to quarter strength. Now you're at a 6, 2, and 4. And you can maybe even go lower. Remember, compost is only like a 1-1-1. 1% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, 1% potassium. You don't need these high numbers, so use less. If you're going to go with the chemical one, certainly bring it down. Here's one, it's a 10-10-10. This is a chemical fertilizer. Bring it down to half, 5-5-5. Bring it down to a quarter, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. That will work perfectly fine for your seed starts. This is an all-organic product, and on here it's a 3-0-4. So you don't have any phosphorus, which is great for root growth, right? So you need the phosphorus to be added to this. And it also is 2.5% of that 3% insoluble. That's not going to be really available to your plant because you don't have the soil life to break it down. So you need to know what you're buying if you're buying organic products. When to fertilize? Generally speaking, because everything varies, I fertilize after the true leaves form, which is about 5 to 7 days after sprouting. So in general, first week they're sprouting, you wait another week, they get their second leaves or their true leaves, and then you fertilize every other day for 10 to 14 days. What does that mean? First week, they germinate. Second week, they're growing off the seed. The seed actually provides nutrients. So after the second week, every other watering for 2 weeks, use your fertilizers. And then after the fourth week, when you get to week 4, every watering can have your half strength, your quarter strength fertilizer, depending on what you're using. That will be plenty of fertilizer for your seed starts, your transplants to grow. Best message to take away: if you go organic, if you go chemical, you can always add more. Greater damage comes from over fertilizing your seed starts, for real. That is the biggest problem. You put in too much, they may yellow. Yellowing plant, everybody's going to say, hey, add Epsom salt, add nitrogen. Now you're adding more fertilizer and you're compounding the problem. Less. Really go quarter strength. How do I do it? A gallon of water, just right on there, fertilizer, whatever you're using, at half strength, quarter strength, and then this just gets rotated in every other watering. That's from a baking soda video. Hope this gives you some understanding of how to feed your plants, how much to feed your seed starts, and what products you might want to use. And just here's for an example. The reason I like to use the fertilizer you mix in water. This is an organic product, all-purpose fertilizer, a nice number, 646, but you can't really use this in your seed starch. You can't lay it on top, it's not going to do anything. If you mix it in there's no soil life to break this down. This is an insoluble, slow-release fertilizer, which is great in my garden, but it's not going to work for your seed starch. So you have to make sure you know what you're buying, know why you're using it, and then just figure out the strength you want to use. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please check out my blog at www.therusticgarden.blogspot.com and check out my YouTube videos. Thanks.